Okay, we're going to pick up right where we left off on our wall section. As I mentioned in the earlier video, we got this drawn up to our first break line. Now, one thing you'll notice is I started drawing this as if this was the building section. So our basement wall actually needs to go out to the face of our, again, what I've been calling our bump out, because this building section was drawn where this was a porch. So we need to modify a few things and move a few things. We know that our bump out comes out 3'4". Easiest thing to do is just offset 3'4", and there's the face of our exterior wall. In plan, we were showing this as 8.5 inches, so we're going to do 8.5 inches, offset 8.5 inches, and there we go with that. Now we know that this goes away and this goes away. And we could go ahead and move all this, but right now we don't know where this is in relation to this wall until we look at our final deliverable. The face of our concrete foundation wall aligns with the face of our sill, which aligns with the face of our rim joist, which aligns with the face of our stud wall. And that stud wall is made up of 2x6s, which are 5.5 inches wide, plus ½ inch of gypsum wallboard for our interior finish. So we know where this interior line is. So we know 5.5 plus a half, which is 6, is the face of our foundation wall. So if I offset 6 inches, that's the line of my concrete wall. So now I can use that. I'm actually going to delete this line. I'm going to move this whole thing out using the face of my concrete, which is this yellow line, not the face of the drainage board. And I'm going to use that as a reference or an inference and bring that over. So now my foundation is aligned with my wall above. I can now extend these lines over just to get them in the general location. Now I want to start drawing this rim board, this sill plate and all that, but I have to start at my finished floor line, and I have 3/4 of an inch of hardwood finish floor, then I have 3/4 of an inch tongue and groove subfloor, and then I have a 2x12. And that 2x12, that rests on top of my mud sill, which is a 2x6. So all of these things added up will give me the right height to find for my top of foundation wall. Now I could add all that up, or I could just start drawing it, which is what I'm going to do. So if this is my finished floor line, I'm going to offset 3/4 of an inch and do that again. So there's the top or the bottom of my subfloor, or the top of my joist. My joists are 2x12s, so that's 11.25 inches. So there is the bottom of my joist. Then, so I can get rid of this line because it's incorrect, and then my joist sits on my mud sill, or my sill plate, which is 1.5 inches. So I'm going to offset that, and lo and behold, that's actually where that line was. So now I can trim that line out to here. And my mud sill goes up to here. My mud sill's a 2x6, so that's a 5.5 inch offset. And notice I'm on the wrong layer. That's fine. Again, I tend to go back after I've drawn a bunch of stuff and make everything on the right layer. So this line here can get trimmed to there. There's my mud sill. I'm actually going to switch now to the red layer, draw in my hatch for a piece of dimensional lumber. Can extend this over to here, draw another line over to here. Draw my rim board. again, that's 1.5 inches. And again, I can draw my cross X, which indicates that that again is another piece of dimensional lumber. My subfloor is going to connect with the top of my rim board, because imagine that I'm looking at the side of my joist here. My subfloor is spanning over my joists, and that gets brought all the way out to the edge of the deck, right? And on that deck, once I build that up, right, I'm gonna pour my foundation, my footing, pour my foundation wall, then I'm gonna pour my slab. I can set my mud sill, and then I'm gonna roll out all my truss joists with my rim board. I'm gonna get that all set into place, and then I'm gonna set my subfloor, and that creates the deck, the platform, if you will. We call this platform framing for a reason. That creates our platform. And then we start building our walls on top of the platform and raising them into place. So here's my wall, and that is going to have a 2x6 bottom plate. So I offset that line to by 1.5 inches. I can trim all these down. And again, I can draw in my X. Now I can also, the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this, copy this break line up. Again, midpoint between 2 points. I'm going to go from my top of my finished floor to the bottom of my joist and trim this back. Now that I have the top of my wall, my foundation wall in place, I can hatch. And notice I don't even care what my hatch is right now. I'm just getting a hatch into those two locations. Now I can go back to match properties, select my concrete hatch and paint it there, start the command again and paint my rigid insulation hatch there. I'm going to get rid of my grade line for now, because in this previous section I was showing grade as flat. Grade is not flat. We'll come to that in a minute. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my line weights. My cut line is coming in from my basement slab, coming up my wall. It's wrapping around here. Now one thing I haven't done yet is we need to insulate this cavity. We have insulation on our concrete wall. We're going to have insulation up here. Well, how do we insulate this rim joist cavity? Well, in ours, we're going to do that with spray foam, some low density spray foam. The way that I like to draw spray foam, because as it gets installed, it's very uneven. I just sort of sketch in this kind of broken line or squiggly line. And the way I do that is I'm going to use the polyline command. So I'm going to switch back to color 004. And from the top edge of my rigid insulation, because I want my insulation to be continuous, I'm just going to use the polyline command. And I'm also going to shut off my polar tracking as well as my snaps. I don't want that to interfere. And I'm just going to start to draw sort of small segments, which if you draw them small enough, you can kind of start to simulate curves. And I'm just going to kind of work my way up in kind of a back and forth motion with some arcs, or what you might perceive to be an arc, till I get up to the bottom of my subfloor. I'm going to trim that off. So you can see there. Now, did I do that? Oh, I didn't do that as a polyline. I did that as a line command, so I kind of screwed that up. So what I can do is I can use the p-edit command. It's going to say select a polyline. I'm going to select this line. It's going to say that's not a polyline. Do you want to turn it into one? I'm going to say yes, enter. Then I'm going to use the join command, select all of these lines, and oops, I don't want to close, sorry. And now I can escape out of that, and now that's all one polyline. You can see all the different line segments I created to kind of get that shape. I'm not going to see my joist within the spray foam, so I'm going to cut my joist off there. And now you can see, again, my cut line comes up. I go through the spray foam. This, which is the bottom of my joist, this I'm seeing an elevation. almost everything that I see in elevation, I consider it's beyond our cut, and I like to make those a pretty light line. So I use my color 1 or red. So that line's coming up and it's getting cut here. So this line here needs to come back to there. Now I have my snaps off. I have to turn those back on, turn my polar tracking back on. And now I can fill this line back in. And now I can start using my match properties. I'm going to grab the yellow line. This is going to be yellow. This is going to be yellow. This is going to be yellow. And you can see my cut goes up until the bottom of my subfloor, goes off through my break line. Now it comes back up to my finished floor. And I'm going to kind of, well, no, I'm going to come back down here now. I'm going to stop up there because I've got some other things to do up there. And here I'm going to grab yellow, although I do want to check that on my original. Yes, I do have those as yellow. This is going to be yellow because this is going to be up against something. Now again, I've got multiple lines in here, which I can do this all with one line. So now this line, there's a cavity here, right? So before I get to that, let's offset 1/2 an inch for my gypsum wallboard. I'm going to offset 3/4 of an inch for my baseboard, and then I'm going to offset 3.5 inches for the top of my baseboard because it's a 1x4. 1x4 is 3/4 by 3.5. Now I can trim to there. Actually, I'm going to fillet that. Then I'm going to trim to there. My baseboard ends. So what's going to happen is my subfloor is going to be put in first. Then I'm going to build my stud wall. I'm going to raise that and I'm going to put that in place. Then the gypsum wallboard is going to be installed. And then my finished floor is going to be installed. And then my baseboard is going to be installed. So you can kind of see how that all works, what goes on top of what in your order of operations when you're building. Now this line here, again, this is inside the cut, so that's got to come up. We replace it with another line. Same thing here. This needs to come back to here, and we replace it with another line. And now we can get back to our line weights, and we can go paint yellow onto there, there, and here. Again, this is going to be different. I'm going to bring this up, and I'll show you why in a second. So I'm going to make that yellow because, again, this is a material against a material inside the cut. So anywhere where two materials touch each other, I use yellow. Anywhere I have a material against a cavity, so this is essentially, now we will be filling this cavity with insulation, but I still see this as a cavity. So anywhere where I have a cavity, I make a green line. And I'm going to jump back to this drawing real quick, the final deliverable, to talk about line weights a little bit. So here, as I zoom in on this PDF, you can see what I'm talking about. The cut is everything I'm cutting through, all the materials, and I want to accentuate that because that's important. This is a section, it's section cut. I want to emphasize the cut. Then every line within the cut, when it's a material against a material, I do yellow. And then you can see these cavities, I do a little bit heavier of the line weight to emphasize that that's an open cavity. So again, my cut goes up, and you can see how that heavy cut line goes all the way through this drawing on the outside contour of all my cut. So let's go back to our drawing. So now we've got this green line inside our cavity. This can actually come up to here because that's going to be green above there. That's yellow. Okay, so I'm going to hatch this spray foam insulation. So hatch, I'm going to use hatch called Honeycomb. It's called Honey. And I'm going to place that in there. That scale looks a little off. I might go maybe 3. That might be a little bit bigger than what I did in the original, but that's not bad. So that's as if I'm cutting through a bunch of spray foam insulation. Now my grade line, let's take care of that. My grade line extends out from the foundation. I'm just going to start right here where the last piece of my wood in my wall is, and I'm going to go out 10 feet, down 6 inches, because that is by code how much I have to slope away from my house. So I'm going to come back to my original spot. I'm going to delete those 2 lines. And now I'm going to move this down 6 inches, which is the minimum distance between grade and any wood in my wall. Now this drainage mat has to end before grade, and that drainage mat is kind of held in place with a clip. And if you open up the wall section blocks file that I provided for this drawing, you can grab all 4 of these blocks with the Control-C command. I'm going to go back to my drawing, and I'm just going to paste those. Control-V. I'm just going to paste those out here. This is that little clip, and I can place that right. What I'm going to do is maybe right around there. So this clip is going to be at or below grade. I'm just going to eyeball that. I'm going to pull my drainage mat down to here, and then I'm going to just come out some distance, draw a line that I can trim to so I don't mess up that angle. And I generally make my grade line very dark, so that's a blue line. It's a very important line in a wall section. This line gets trimmed back to there. Now on the exterior face of my stud wall, I have 1/2 inch of, in this case, zip system sheathing. Then I have 1 inch of continuous insulation. And then I have 3/4 of an inch of furring. That runs typically, and I'm gonna grab all of those lines to at least the bottom of your mud sill. Now a lot of times you don't want that gap to show up, so sometimes you can extend this, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stretch this down 1/2 inch past that point. And there's a bunch of other stuff that's going to be happening at the bottom of this wall, which we are not showing in this wall section. To show it, we would need to cut a detail here, blow it up to an even larger scale, and show that. But for now, we're going to stick with this. I'm going to draw my line across the bottom here, and then that is my cut line. This actually gets, let's see, that's going to get trimmed between here, and I'm just going to trim it to my clip, because this clip is kind of end up showing relatively heavy. So now I'm going to draw that in, and again I'm kind of on the wrong layer still. I'm going to fillet this. Now I'm going to match my properties. So cyan to there, and then the rest of these are all going to be yellow. So now we have our floor structure, the beginnings of our exterior wall, and all the insulation in here. So now we have everything from the first break line up to a little bit above our first floor done. I'm going to wrap this video up here, and I'm going to continue in the next one.